I'm Mykola Kuleba, former Commissioner on Children's Rights with two presidents, Poroshenko and Zelensky, and just finished my work 6 months before this full-scale invasion. And just now I'm CEO of Save Ukraine Rescue Network, which is the biggest network who rescuing children and families affected by war.
How many facilities do you guys operate within Ukraine?
We have more than 30 different centers, and our three main pillars is rescue, restore, and rebuild. We're rescuing children and families from combat zones, and we rescued more than 90,000 people from there. We have more than 60 vehicles, armored car, armored buses, 12 rescue teams, and 10 rescue hubs where we provide emergency assistance and then send these families to our different programs. It is a first pillar, rescue. Second, it's restore. Like here, just now, Hope and Healing Center, we have 5 different Hope and Healing Centers for families with children and one for abandoned elderlies, which we found, whom we found in combat zones and rescued. And every day, 200 or 300 people we are rescuing. And just now, our rescue teams operates in front line. And we provide trauma therapy, art therapy for children, trauma therapy for parents to recover and reunite families, especially that families whom children were abducted to Russia, and we rescued them, we returned them to Ukraine. Our third pillar is rebuild. We're rebuilding these families, we integrate them to local communities, and we rebuild our country. Next, our program, we are building houses. We're building modular houses and build more than 100 houses. After recovering, we place families with children to our houses all over Ukraine in safer areas to integrate them into a local community and save their lives. And I remember August of last year when our militaries deoccupied territories and our rescue teams recognized the families whom children were abducted. And we tried to understand how it happened, and because Russians took these kids, or they did it through collaborators. They were invited our children to camps. It was re-educational camps, and after our militaries deoccupied territories, Russians told we will never send children back, and if parents want, they can come. And we immediately started our rescue missions because we did it before from occupied territories when we returned families with children, especially foster families, and then to return from the Russia, we try to build a structure, and just now we have 40 people who work every day to prepare next our rescue mission, and just now we have our 6th rescue mission, and we return close 100 children from Russia who were abducted, and all of these children were documented, and it is a case for war criminal court. I can't tell you how we provide this rescue mission because it's very dangerous. It's confidential because this mission is totally different. But the last one, when we returned 31 child, maybe the was hardest one. One grandmother who went to Russia to take 2 grandchildren died after 14 hours interrogation in Moscow. Next day after interrogation, her heart stopped. We couldn't help her. We took her body to Ukraine to bury her. We're trying to return these 2 kids to Ukraine. It's very hard because Russians blocking this. And it's a tragedy, especially after first invasion 2014. Hundreds of thousands children stayed on occupied territories or in Russia Federation, and now it's 1.5 million Ukrainian children who are there under the Russians. And they brainwash them. They want to totally destroy the Ukrainian identity there. It is genocide. What they're doing, it's a total genocide of Ukrainian children. Then we have to fight against this. It is our call to all countries. Help us to fight against evil, against Russia, who brainwash Ukrainian children, who torture them, because all of these children are captured and they are hostages in Russia or on occupied territories, and they want to do more. They want to kill more. You will never understand Russians because you never been Russian, yeah, and you never were formed as a Russian with all this horrible mindset. And I've been in Soviet Union. I grew up in Soviet Union. I finished school in Soviet Union, and I was brainwashed in Soviet Union. I never identified myself as Ukrainian, but really I was Ukrainian, and I was born in Kiev.
What are some things that you believed?
Or like, I believe that Americans, it's a total evil, who want destroyed us, yeah, who want to kill us, who have slaves all over the world. And we were fighting against the US, and because we didn't want to be their slaves. Exactly now, this has happened in Russia, in unoccupied territories. They brainwash kids. They telling them that here it's a Nazi. I am a main Nazi because I love Ukraine. I identify myself as Ukrainian. I have 4 kids, and my family are Ukrainian. That's why I'm an enemy. And it's very interesting. Putin's advisor, who was responsible for negotiation between Russia and Ukraine, just 1 year ago reported that Ukrainian land belonged Russian children. And this guy was born in Ukraine. And I don't know why they're doing this, but they hate us. They want to kill us. They want to destroy our country. They want totally destroy Ukrainian identity. One child told that he attended Russian school, and all these children had somebody in Russian army who were fighting against Ukraine. And it was dangerous for him express something Ukrainian. It was dangerous. And it's years and years. And really many children decided that, oh, it's better to be Russian. It's safer. It's safer. One girl, 15 years old girl, when our army deoccupied territories and came to Kherson region, one lady told her, listen, it is not Ukrainian army. It is the American criminals coming, and they will rape children and women, and we have to run away. And they believe and run away to Crimea. And Russians place her to shelter, and we return her to Ukraine. What is the main narratives for Russians? We are friends, we are brothers, sister, we are one country. And my kids never feel this, because I bring on them with a different mindset. And that's why it's a key time for Russia to grab, to invite us at all, to make us easy is their land, is part of Russian Empire. If not, they will lost us, втратить нас. They will lose us forever. Yeah, that's why it's a key time for them. They understand this clear. That's why after occupation, they invite children to their schools, and I've seen tomes. I have these books, freshly printed books in Moscow last year after invasion, and they bring these tons of books to Ukrainian schools and invite our teachers to collaborate and to start Russian program to re-educate Ukrainian children. And you will find tens of thousands young adults who were school children in Ukrainian school in Donbass. And after 2014, they brainwashed them. And now these young adults fighting in Russian army against Ukraine. Their strategy, it's very simple. And if you will ask them, why doing this? They tell, we are fighting against NATO. We are fighting against Ukrainian Nazi. They believe this because they were re-educated and brainwashed during the last 9 years.
The reason, it's more of an abstract perspective than what Maffola just said. But the reason, this antagonism exists, the reason why Russians are so hyper-focused and preoccupied with the Nazism is in Ukraine, because the victory over Nazism in the World War II is like the glue that holds the Russian society together. The victory, once Soviet Union came together, they needed a number of national myths that would hold, that would come up with and make the ideology, create the ideology. And then victory over Nazism became eventually a very powerful myth that held the Russian society and then the Soviet countries around it. So Russians, being someone who inherited the Soviet legacy, Russians still folded very important and very dear to their national and political identity. So, their victory over Nazism, it's something that makes them Russian. It's make them who they are right now. So the antagonism, what Mikola said, but you are your own, you are Russian or you're Soviet and the whole world is against you. It's like such a, gaslighting, abusive technique that people use, to create these false antagonism between people and between nations and between identities, between everything. So them finding this abstract Nazi enemy in Ukraine, which does not exist. Ukraine does not have a single political party that is far right, that is, in the position of power. There is nothing there. They feed this myth about Azov being the evil Nazis. That's bullcrap propaganda. What can I say? But
what would you say it is though? Then, because
in my views, Azov Battalion, had its beginnings in the right ideologies. That is true. But right now, Azov Battalion is the key defender of the city of Mariupol. Right now, Azov Battalion is the key defender of the entire front line. The existence of Azov Battalion was a guarantee. What was this the torch, the sign that the world saw about us, was the example of inhumane bravery. How could... you can, if you listen to enough propaganda, you can call everyone a Nazi, virtually everyone. But those people have sacrificed so much and endured so much in order to defend their freedom, their national identity, their land, what is theirs. And if that is not, this adamant, unbreakable soul, then I don't know what it is.
And I wanna continue this. Can you imagine our children who we returned from Russia reporting us that they lived in the re-educational camps where every day they listen 4 or 5 hours Russian anthem. Russian anthem played in that camps 4 or 5 hours a day. What for? To brainwash them.
I would ask, who is going to be responsible for all the damage that they have done by coming to Ukraine? Who is going to mend this damage, and who is going to take responsibility for all the suffering that they have brought? Instead,
No, they have answer. No, we are responsible. They think we are responsible for this. Because...
I'm talking right now to one.
Yeah.
I'm freaking one bus.
Oh, real?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's exactly the conversation today.
Hmm?
And he is basically saying, well, you guys did it to yourself. Right. You did it to yourself. You let NATO come and invade your country.
Uh-huh.
And we are liberating you. So they're doing us a favor.
could you ever see a possibility where someone like Zelensky could sit down with Putin and discussed this war and tried to come to some sort of a solution? No.
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 Zero chance.
No.
No.
It's impossible.
No, I've been in Minsk negotiation. I've been.
Oh, you've been in the negotiations. Really?
I've been there.
What's
I've
it?
been in Minsk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you talk
About children's issues because I was children's ombudsman
what do they
that time.
What do they say when you bring up like
It's like a wall. It's like a wall. We're telling them,
our top officials, quote unquote, brainwashed
Yeah.
too?
yeah,
So who's the brainwashing? Who's pulling the strings? Is it Putin?
Yeah.
Is it? Because I've heard it's bigger than Putin. Some people have said this is not Putin. This is bigger than Putin.
No,
you
no.
think it? No, you think it's Putin.
He's the boss. He's the boss. He's telling everybody what to do.
Then do you think that too? Is it put? What?
Yeah, I totally agree with.
Well, that's okay. I want everything.
It's his responsibility.
Yeah, but as I told you before, it's a problem bigger than Putin. You don't need to have like a boss behind the overseer who's doing being the puppet master, because the mechanism functions perfectly by itself. The mechanism, all the settings have been ingrained into it long ago, so it doesn't need a push. If the Putin is gone, they will have another
Maybe the
orderly dictator, doing the same thing as successfully, less successfully, depends on the support that they're going to get. So that's my opinion.
We're telling, it could be worse, but it could be better too. That if a new leader, for example, will come and say, we will stop this war. Okay, Yeltsin.
I do not deny the fact that Putin is responsible. He's the war criminal. He's the one who actually has an arrest on his on the International Criminal Court. But the point that I'm trying to make is, I'm talking right now as we filming this with a guy from Russia. On social media, it's not a bot. It's not a troll. It's a real person with a real bio. We've been talking, and if he literally believes that all of Ukraine is at fault for this war. He believes that Ukrainians have to be eliminated and subject to the rule of Russia. And I'm like, well, but I'm a free being. I want my own life. He's like, well, yeah, but you cannot live according to the Western values because you've always been Russian.
Mm-hmm.
And the point, he's not Putin.
Mm-hmm.
He's not Putin, and not Putin's like that. There are millions of them in Russia.
Yeah.
And the way that I view it, Putin is a symptom of a much bigger sickness. He's a symptom.
I think he's
been expressed.
cancer. He's in the center of cancer.
I think he's the manifestation, one of the little manifestations of this cancer, but the cancer is much, much bigger than Putin. It's the culture, it's the literature, it's the generations of brainwashing and propaganda that has led to one of the manifestations, which is called Putin. Another one, Medvedev, another one's.
Yes, but and you're right. I agree that Russians, adults, have no chance to be changed. They have no chance. Their mindset, its paradigm, nothing changed. But with next generation, step by step, could be changed. It's 2 or 3 generations we need.
I studied Ukrainian history at my school, at my university, very hard. And if we should see it from the prospect of our Ukrainian history, and Russia never they never changed. They had been doing all the same things for centuries. So I don't believe that even 50 years will pass, and some wonderful way they will change and recognize us as an independent country, or our language, or our people as a nation. I just don't believe that.
And John, just to respond to your question about negotiations. I mean, how can you negotiate with somebody who came to kill you? Somebody comes into your house, starts raping your wife, killing your children, and then let's sit down and talk. What are we going to talk about? Rape that child, but not that one? What are we talking about? This is just inhumane when even people push this sort of narrative. And then think about other things. What are we going to negotiate for? That we give part of the territories? How much are you willing to give away from your house if the robber comes to take you? What are we going to talk about? Oh, let's have peace for how long? So that Russia can recuperate, build a stronger army, and then go further and kill us more? And who are you going to talk about? The people who said, oh, we are not attacking Ukraine. We're just on the border doing this special training. And then the next day, they're full invasion. I mean, this is a nation of liars. In any way democratic, whether it's a negotiation-wise, strategic, or just from the moral perspective, this negotiations should not happen. And it cannot happen. And what pisses me off, and it's just a complete bullshit, when the people say on the media, oh, Zelensky doesn't want to negotiate. Here we have in the room 5 people with completely different, paths of life, have nothing to do with Zelensky. And we don't want to negotiate. If our president were to go to negotiate, we would be the first one to say, I'm not going to say those words on TV, but you heard us.
Мне 15 лет, и я с Херсона.
I'm 15 years old. I'm from Kherson, and I was playing volleyball. I was attending school. I was just living normal life.
That was before the war.
Это было до этого. I woke up early in the morning as a usual day. I was going to hang out with my friends to spend just a usual day. Then I started receiving messages that it's a war. And after a while, I started hearing explosions and smoke outside. First days of war, we were just not getting out of basement. So usually we were getting to the basement when we heard explosions. But first 2 days of the war, we were just in a basement nonstop.
And then, from what we've been told, at some point, she was taken to Russia.
And one of our main teachers, she was promoting us opportunity to go for summer camp for mental health, to get arrested, just to. The only thing that she asked for is official permission from parents for letting her kids to go for this summer camp. The next day, we had an opportunity to go to that summer camp, and we were not told the details. We were just got into the bus and we got to Yevpatoria and Crimea for a couple weeks, just for summer camp. And when we got there, after two weeks, we were told that it's gonna be longer, and they're not allowed to get back to Ukraine. They could go to any other safer place in the Russian area, and the only way they could get back home if their parents would take them back, come to Crimea and take them home. But at the same time, they were not allowed to get back on Ukrainian territory.
So, just to get the story straight,
Their teacher
a Ukrainian teacher
said, okay, guys, we're doing the summer camp. And said where the summer camp was. It was like, yes, it's in Russian-controlled Crimea.
Yes, we were warned that it was going to be in Crimea.
That's okay.
well, they were at war.
There was no problem to go and take a vacation summer camp in Crimea.
Even though the war was
It was for good, because their teacher was saying that it's safer to be in Crimea rather than
the war's already going on. Yes or no?
Yes.
Crimea is controlled by Russia, and they were told that they could go technically to Russia for a summer camp, and it was safe. And she knew she was going to Russia. She knew she was going to Crimea.
We knew that we were going on Russian territory. The only thing that why we were going there, because it was a safer place with the opportunity to get a summer camp. And our teacher was convincing us that it's safer to be in other place rather than your son.
Does she think her Ukrainian teacher was purposely misleading them?
Teacher got them into a delusion. She was convincing them that they're going to Crimea for a couple weeks. That's very good. When they were brought to Crimea after 2 weeks, the kids started realizing that something is wrong. It has been already more than 2 weeks, and they're not allowed to go.
Did the teacher go with them?
Yes, the teacher went with them. They started telling the teacher, you told us we're going for 2 weeks. There's official permission for our parents for 2 weeks, and we've been here longer. And one day, the teacher called totally drunk to her mother, and she confessed that she knew that they were going for longer than 2 weeks.
Let's kind of go through the timeline. First, before I even get into it, is this teacher that she had, was it like a teacher out of nowhere? Was it a new teacher? Was it a teacher she's known for a while? Trying to kind of understand the background here.
It was a new teacher.
So how long did she know the teacher before the summer camp came up?
They knew her for about 2 months. They met for the first time this teacher in September, and this teacher suggested them to go to summer camp in October. It's about a month.
So about a month. Hey, let's talk about this teacher a little bit. It's a Ukrainian school teacher, right? But in a Ukrainian school.
By that time, Kherson was occupied by
The Russians.
Russians.
Makes sense. Okay.
But they were still keeping the school system going, so they just had their own teachers in there.
Okay, so yeah, okay.
They were implementing their own teachers, their own
Got it.
Were there parents that didn't let their kids go? Now I understand the story. So let's say she's on her way to Crimea. She gets to the summer camp. Before she found out she was going to be staying there longer, was it what she anticipated, what she was told, a place where they could relax? Did it feel like that?
There were some pupils that didn't go to that summer camp. Some of us were at this summer camp. We're having a good time. Everything was fine. By the time we realized when it got to longer than 2 weeks, we realized that something is going wrong. And then we were told that parents of those kids who were in the camp should come from Kherson to Crimea to pick up their kids. When the parents came to Crimea to pick up their own kids, they were told that they're not allowed to get back to Kherson, explaining it's a dangerous location and they can go to any other safer place on Russian territory.
Did they offer somewhere for the families to go, since obviously they don't live there? So if the parents come to pick up their kids and then they're like, okay, we want to go back home, they say, no, you can't go back home. You have to stay on the Russian side. Did they offer, like, you can go here to stay, or was it just figure it out?
They offered them 100,000 rubles for Russian passport. They offered them a certificate for a potential house on Russian Federation.
So after she found out 2 weeks that she's staying longer, where did she go?
We didn't have financial resources to live in the West. In European countries, we didn't have the financial resources to live in Russia, and we didn't want to. We wanted to live in Ukraine. And when, after 6 months being on Crimea, when her mother found an organization called Save Ukraine, they both immediately got evacuated.
So how did you get evacuated? How does that?
My mom just came over to the camp and she signed a certain paper that she's taking her daughter back, and that was it. They just let us go.
What was different about, why were they able to take you home that time, but before it wasn't an option?
She found volunteers who could do that only by that time. But first, everything was cool. There were a lot of kids, and we were getting acquainted with each other, and we were happy. But after a while, the parents started taking away their kids to other locations, and there started becoming less and less people in the camp, and we were transferred into another camp. When we moved to another camp, we were told we don't have any rights. We cannot express our opinion. We kids were called nasses and fasses, and that our rights are.
So the tone changed when they moved to the second camp. And who was telling them this?
И вообще, но больше всего Астахов.
There was one guy who was responsible for security in this camp. He was calling us asses and fasses.
What would you say back?
Stefan needs to see it.
What did he tell us?
Am I allowed to first? So this guy was big and bald, and we were calling him Big, Bald, and Dick.
How did he react to that?
He would force us to clean all the territory of the camp.
And what if they refused to clean?
This bald, big, Dick. He told them that, okay, now guys, we're going to a prison, and all the parents will be able to pick you up from there. And the kids were scared to death about that. So they were pretty obedient because they were full of fear. First of all, I didn't experience any physical violence from himself, but I heard that one guy was telling me a story how this bald Dick hit one guy with a stick.
How many people were with her at this second camp?
About 400 kids. We had guards at the exits. We were just waking up. We had breakfast. We had physical exercise timing, and we were showing skits. We were watching movies, and before school, we were forced to listen Russian.
The Russian anthem?
So they were forcing us to listen to their hymn, and they were abusing us with insulting us, calling us that Ukrainians are not thankful, that Ukrainians eat their food, Ukrainians drink their water. They called Ukrainian males prostitutes without a reason. They just called them. They were using different abusive words, falling for the kids in a bad way.
Ну да, мы с этого смеялись.
We were just ignoring it. We were laughing and we were having fun what they were saying.
You were openly laughing at their faces.
Being it so. We were allowed to use Telegram. We could message our parents, but we could not always do that because of the bad connection in your son.
Встретим, наверное.
When they were transferred into the third camp, she felt there like she stayed by herself at the third camp. She felt alone there.
I wanted to also ask her, what was it like living under Russian occupation?
It was not good. We had shellings, shootings around. But the prices were tremendously raised up.
Who does she blame for this war in Ukraine?
Знаю, наверное, правительство русского.
I think government. From one point of view, I think the Russians can refuse for all those commands that they receive from their government.
Does she have Russian friends?
One girl, she's from Lugansk region,
Она живет в Крыму.
but she lives in Crimea.
Ну как, я думаю, она сама устала от войны.
I think she's also sick and tired of this war as well.
My name is Mariana, and I became a prisoner of war from the city of Mariupol, being on the third month of pregnancy. I was a Marine, Ukrainian Marine, and we were stationed on outside of Mariupol on the seaside. And then when we were being overpowered by Russian forces, we retreated to the city.
Я була військовим лікарем.
She was her specialty was medical.
Medic.
A medic, military medic.
Wow. And you went to technically the front lines pregnant.
Yes, so she was from the beginning pregnant, the first almost 2 months.
Wow.
Into pregnancy, she was already in the front lines.
And did she have to go there by, like, could she have gotten out of it because she's pregnant? Or did she choose to go, like she wanted to be there?
Okay. So she has been in military service since 2018.
Wow.
And she was a medical doctor with a unit that was in the Donbass area, town of Shirokino. So she did not know she was pregnant at the time, at the beginning of war. The unit was moved to Mariupol, and she did not know she was pregnant until March. So she did not know she was pregnant right away, but until March. So by the time she knew, she was already.
And so she was she was a Ukrainian prisoner of war. Can she talk about, like, walk our viewers through, like, what led up to her becoming a prisoner? How did this happen?
She was in a bunker at the time. It was April 4th, yes. She was in a city that was surrounded by Russian forces. There was no escape, really. Her sanitary assistant called her and said, we are all being instructed to come to cafeteria, reason unknown, and just need to come. So everybody comes and they tell us that another unit has received heavy human losses, and we need to go and help them. So they put everyone in a van or a bus, including those who were wounded, who were in a bunker at the time, to move to this location that they were instructed to go to help another unit. So as they were going, they puncture a tire. They then switched to another vehicle, a small, like a light truck, not bigger than pickup, like a 3-ton truck or whatnot. So with all the people sitting in a trailer, going somewhere, and they were being shot. For the first time, she saw such lit up sky with phosphorus bombs that explodes in the air, and then phosphorus drops. So everything was lit up. That was the first. Then they came further and thought they arrived to where they were instructed to arrive. And as they come, they hear dogs barking and so on, and Russian language. But it was not uncommon to hear Russian language in the area of the country. It's a common language. So then the back curtain of the trailer is lifted, and they see soldiers with white tapes on their arms, with guns pointed at them, and they realize that they're not Ukrainian, they're Russian. And these Russian soldiers say, now you're prisoners of war. You're being captured by the army of Donetsk People's Republic.
Wow.
And you can preserve your life if you follow our instructions. If you raise your hands and slowly step out of the vehicle, you will be prisoners of war. If you try to escape, you will be shot on the spot. And this is the beginning, and this is the worst day to remember. She was trying to remember, her palms of her hands started sweating, and she does not want to remember this day.
Wow.
That's the day that changed everything.
Long from that day until she was free.
Скільки ви були?
6 місяців я потрапила.
Almost 6 months.
6 months.
Yes.
And okay, so did you go to like a Russian prison? Like, where did they take her?
Куди вас? We were just taken to a warehouse. We lived in a warehouse.
В складі.
First 3 days.
Did they feed you guys? Did they?
There were grates. There were no windows in this warehouse, only grates. So yes, they fed us, but they were looking at us as animals in a zoo through the grates, and we slept just on the ground. And it was April and it was still very cold.
Did they treat I don't want to say with dignity, but was there like there's reports that some of these these Ukrainian prisoners of war are tortured, beaten. There's all these abuses that take place. I've even heard that they don't get fed. She said they were fed, but did any of that other type of abuse happen, or did she see it?
Mm-hmm. It's true that Ukrainian prisoners of war are not fed enough. For example, they may give you enough food to sustain your life, and it's irregular hours for feeding. For example, your breakfast could be at 6, lunch at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and dinner at 2 o'clock at night. And then the next breakfast may come or not come, you don't know. When it comes to feeding, when it comes to torture, yes, it's true that you may have seen, like today, a video was published how head was cut off from a Ukrainian prisoner of war. A video was published today, and that is true. And the place where we were staying as women, and the torture chamber was right next, so you could hear all the torture, for hours, how men were being tortured, and often tortured to death. So bodies would be carried out at the end of the shift before the new shift comes in. They would carry out dead bodies of tortured to death soldiers. Wow. And I have seen that personally. I have heard it personally because the chamber that I was in was next to the torture chamber. So I had to experience and see it, how it happened.
Right now, how are you doing?
Seeing the counter, they cannot leave you without trace. Yes, after the captivity, I was working daily with a psychological therapist, and often I would just come and cry, and psychologist was trying to help me deal with it. And so my biggest happiness now that I'm free, it's like the ultimate happiness. And in addition to that, I'm so happy that my child is healthy in spite of what we've been through. But having said that, how can you forget what you have seen and experienced? How can you forget a mother that is standing over her little child that was killed and just crying over a child, and you see it in front of you? How can you forget seeing a family running for safety, but the mortar explodes nearby, killing the whole family, and the man is standing over his entire family being killed, and he's the only one left alive, and he's standing there over his entire family dead in front of him. How can you forget seeing a rocket hit apartment building, and the apartment building is collapsing in front of your eyes? How can you forget hearing torture for 6 hours straight? Men being tortured, begging for mercy, and in response, you hear laughter of Russian soldiers, and laughter of Russian soldiers who continue to torture him with displeasure and laughter. And how can you forget the sound of scotch tape that is being wrapped around a soldier that was about to be tortured and beaten? You cannot forget that. Once you experience this, it stayed with you and it will stay with me forever, even though I have gone through. And I'm a very happy person now that I have a healthy child. I was the only pregnant woman, but total women prisoners of war, 105 or 106 women.
What's your group?
Yes.
How many total?
But total 200 women. But at the time when she was released, it was like 105 or 106 women.
How many with men total? Or are they separated?
The jail was built for 200 people, and total we had 800 of us in that jail. So, for you to understand the density, a chamber that had 6 for 6 people, we had 40 women in this one room for 6, and a room for 2 inmates had 20 men in one. Wow. What do you think with the attitude and treatment of Ukrainian prisoners of war, just by this fact?
So how do you living in those conditions, how do you not give up? And were her fellow inmates, were people giving up?
So at one of the interrogations at the beginning of activity beginning of April, she was allowed to call her husband, and she told her husband that she was pregnant. And wow. So this, so they had this brief conversation, like, now you have to be strong. And she believes that this was the source of her strength, that now she has to be strong, not for herself, family, but for her child. And she made a promise to her child that she will not give up, that she will be strong for both of them. And so she knew her family loved her. They were doing what they could, but she needed to be strong for her child. What she was encouraged with was that other inmates were sharing food. Like somebody would take a little piece of meat or a potato from their bowl of soup, whatever good they could find in their bowl, they would share with her, and there was encouragement. And some prisoners were allowed to receive packages from their families, and of course, each package only 30% was given to the inmate, but somebody would give a cucumber or some little thing that they would share with her, and it was a very pleasant memory that the others were sharing. So she was strong, being strong because she had to be strong for her child, and other women and men look at her and were getting strength from her example that she was being strong. So it was a closed cycle that that everyone had to be strong for another. The difficulty was in manipulation when there would be an announcement that now exchange will take place, and she would be thinking, okay, I'm pregnant, I should be like the first on the list, and she was not. Time after time, like they would exchange 10 people at a time, and her name was not mentioned. So the door to the cell would be open, and the Russian officers would say, see, nobody needs you in Ukraine. Ukraine only needs fighting men. Nobody needs you because you're pregnant, so nobody cares about you. And so she was being
Humiliated.
manipulated with that. And she said that on one hand, she was convinced that her family loves her and everybody's doing what they can. But that repeated manipulation sometimes was getting to her as far as doubt. Would be exchanges of these 10 women at a time, and every time she would get ready and pack her belongings, which was not much, like a jacket or whatnot, but she would be waiting and ready, and she again would not be exchanged. One time they were lined up, and names would be called, and like the names of those who will be exchanged will be called, and people would step out of line and go to the group that was going to depart. And she was waiting for her name, and then her name is called. And her name is called, and she was told, step out of the line. She steps out of the line, and she's told, now you go back to your cell. Because, see, you're pregnant, nobody needs you in Ukraine, so now you go back to your cell. So there was a special emphasis, psychological pressure on her because of this. But she kept the hope, and she kept this, she had encouragement and care from other inmates, and she kept the hope, like, I cannot give up. I have to hope that one day I'll be free, and that's what she
did.
What she did. She was from 23rd of August, was placed in, on her 9th month of pregnancy, was placed in Donetsk hospital, and like on 18th of September, she had, in the hospital, she had 2 guards guarding her that she would not run away, pregnant without documents in the middle of Donetsk. She heard that one of the guards asked the head of the department, is she transferable? Is she movable? And that gave her hope, because before that, she was told, don't even think that you're going to be having birth in Ukraine. You will have birth here, And so they already placed her at the hospital in Donetsk for her to have birth there. And this was a sign of hope that they're thinking something.
So a Russian guard tried to get her.
Asked. I don't know if it was his initiative, but at least he asked if she is transportable. Asked the doctor, and the doctor said yes, but you have 2 or 3 days max. So 2 days go by. On the 20th of September, she's she's ready to give birth, but she's waiting, and 2 days go by, and then they come and they say, okay, we'll be moving you. So of course she was encouraged, but then she was told, don't get yourself excited, you will be moved to Olenivka, the infamous location of the prisoners of war where they were kept. So she brought to Olenivka, where she sees prisoners being taped. Their hands are zip tied, and their eyes are taped with dark tape. But that was happening either for moving or for release. So she was hoping that it was going to be release. Of course, her eyes were taped, but they didn't zip tie her hands because she had to hold her stomach and keep the balance. They were moved to Dandro from Olenivka, and then after that they were boarded on a plane, and a cargo plane, military cargo plane, where people could sit into 2 levels. So with eyes, taped, she was placed there, and hours go by. They're flown to Moscow. She's not allowed. Nobody's allowed to go to the bathroom, in these hours and hours and hours. So she was given a bottle and said, if you want to go in a bottle, try to go in a bottle. And she said, well, but you have a toilet on board. Like, yes, but it's not allowed for prisoners to go to the toilet here. So she's flown to Moscow. From Moscow, she's then put on another plane to Minsk, Belarus. Then they fly them to Minsk, and from Minsk, they're transported towards Chernihiv region. So she, in all these circles, Chernihiv region, and last 3 kilometers of the journey, she was placed in an ambulance. So it looked like they were taking care of her, delivering her to the border in an ambulance. So she comes to the border in an ambulance, and doors open, and she hears Ukrainian language. It's okay. So she's taken by hands very gently. It's okay, just try to come out slowly, and she's coming out, and they take the tape off her eyes, and she could see yellow and blue sign saying Ukraine at the border point. And this was the sweetest moment. And she started crying. They said, don't cry, you should not cry. Everything is all right, everything will be all right. You will be home, you're home. And those are the sweetest moments, sweetest memory, to realize that you can be home. And then from that point on, everything is like falling into place.
Nice. Every person I come into contact with, I'm going to ask this on the Ukrainian side. If you could say one thing to Russian President Vladimir Putin, after all you've gone through, what would you say?
Stop.
What does she want to see happen? Does she just want, obviously she wants the war to end, but what's sufficient to her? Is it them leaving out of Donetsk and all the occupied regions that they've taken since last year, or is she wanting them even out of Crimea? I mean, what is, nothing will ever make this okay, but what would be a step in the right direction, if that's even possible?
Be positive signs if Russians or Putin would stop killing our people. If on the stage, when all the Ukrainian what was taken would be returned back. We don't need any that's not ours, just need what is ours to be ours and return back. And on stage, if Putin would realize that he is actually exterminating and killing the whole nation.
If it was needed for her to go back, better way to put it.
Ну, якби, наприклад, була в тому потреба і вас призвали би знову.
Would you go
Чи ви
for your country?
знову пішли?
Or
Так.
yes.
Те, що мене зупиняє, це моя дитина.
Yes, I have a stopping point now, and that is my child. Thanks to America, we have now means of war. At the beginning, we had nothing. So now being in war is actually easier, having at least some. We don't have enough, not as much as we would like to, but we have a lot more than we used to have, and so now being in this combat is more would be more interesting.
Yeah.
That's
If she could describe the Ukrainian people in one word.
Сильні.
strong.
Strong. And a lot of our viewers are people in Western countries, specifically the United States. How does she view the United States and the world today?
Одна з найсильніших та найвпливовіших на теперішній час.
Probably one of the strongest and most influential for now times.
For now times.
No,
Like current?
Тобто ви маєте, she would not want to emphasize on the now times.
Yeah,
She
we got it.
believes Ukraine believes America has good and strong people. The world has been looking up to America, and a lot of expectations come to that, and we had our expectations, but we had our expectations met in a lot of ways by way of help. So America is one of the biggest helpers for Ukraine in this war, and we appreciate that, and we hope for bright and positive outlook for.
Need to know. She could say anything, like she could talk to Westerners and say anything that I didn't ask, anything that she wants to say. This is her time to do it. She thinks it's important. It could be anything.
I would like to thank over and over American people for showing, when it mattered, showing the real support and help. Because, that's when you really know who's your friend. If it were not, we didn't have the means of war. We could not withstand the offensive from Russia. They say they don't have enough. They have enough. They have a lot. For 300 of us, 25,000 Russians were headed. So they have a lot of manpower. They have a lot of weapons that we didn't have, and if it weren't for help, we wouldn't have. So maybe it would sound a little borderline for some people that I would be thanking for for military means, weapons of war, and so on. But I also want to thank for means of saving lives. As a medic, it's highly rewarding to be able to save someone's life. And if you don't have any means to save someone's life, it's a lot more hard to see that life lost. So having the humanitarian aid and medical supplies that help us to save lives, and people like me and other medics would tell you that too. That it's we are feeling very grateful when we are able to do that job. And so I want to thank over and over for all the kindness that we have received. And also would like to wish to American people never to encounter war and loss, total loss, sudden loss, just because of sickness of one man who, without shame and mercy, exterminating a whole nation. Belongings you can restore, but loss of family, loss of life, irreversible loss is very difficult. And so I would like to wish Americans never to have to know what it's like.